So greetings and welcome to today's educational program, Generations. Who am I talking to, or should it be with Jd Marhevko. This is your moderator, Doug Wood, with ASQ's Quality Management Division. So today we have the distinct pleasure of hearing from Jd Marhevko. Please join me in welcoming her. Jd is a VP of Quality for the Electronics and ADAS division of ZF Group. She has 35 years or so progressive executive leadership experience in multiple industries, including automotive, military, aerospace, food and medical services. She's been inducted into the USA's Women in Manufacturing Hall of Fame, and she holds several honors, including an ASQ Shannon Medal and an ASQ Fellowship. She's helped to transform several organizations from bankruptcy to best-in-class performance. In one business, 4 sites were honored by the Association of Manufacturing Excellence with an AME Excellence Award as best-in-class in industry. Jd has co-authored several books and articles on lean and quality systems. She's an adjunct professor for the University of Michigan Nexus and serves on a board of directors for an aluminum casting firm. She holds a BSc and an MSA. So without further ado, Jd, it's my pleasure to give the mic to you.
Thanks, Doug. I really appreciate it. Those of you that are on the call, please put into the chat where you're calling in from. I know we had a gentleman from Arizona, but let us know where you're calling in from. It's helpful for me so that I can see what we've got. I got Nashville and Elkhart. Oh, this is amazing, guys. Thank you so much. Holy cannoli, it's coming in so fast. This is great. We're going to be having an interactive session, so I'm going to be asking you questions based on your age group. You don't have to tell me how old you are. I don't want to know that because I'm not going to tell you how old I am, and that would only be fair. So, but based on the age group that you're in, I'm going to be asking you some questions for some feedback. So what we're going to be talking about is, who are we talking to? Our life's lessons can be intense. As Doug said, I've been out there for more than 35 years. It's been longer than that, but that's all I'll own about. And across my journey, I've been taught a lot about working across our generations. And in our society today, we need to be agile and adaptive in order to survive. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify the 5 types of generations that we have today in our workforce and develop a communication plan that allows you as the communicator to work with the receiver so that you can have a higher success rate of getting back and forth what you need. And then to evaluate the effectiveness of your communication plan. And then to modify your techniques so that you can increase your rate of success. I do this almost daily on a regular basis. I work with people all over the world, many cultures, a lot of differences. And in dealing with that, I often find when I'm working with an individual that I don't know very well, I'm going to create a small point of attack, a small plan in advance before I pick up that phone and talk to that person so that I can make sure that I'm putting myself into the right frame of mind so that I can increase our chance of success. So let's go through our 5 generations. This is before 1946. Technically, they're older than 76 years old. And from a communication need, they want that respect for experience and wisdom. They deserve it if they're that old. And they want clear and concise terminology. We want to avoid disregarding their experience and expertise. I mean, I'm not that old yet, but I know that I really don't know more. There are some areas of expertise that I might have, but that doesn't mean I have more common sense or practical knowledge. Using slang can also be disruptive in trying to deal with an older individual. If any of you are on the phone, older than 76, I have a chat question for you. What shouldn't we assume about you? So if any of you are on the chat right now or in the audience right now, if you would give us that. And while we're waiting for some of that, I want to show you my daughter's boss. So that's my daughter in the right-hand picture. She's 27 now. That's her boss, Ruth Colvin. And Ruth was 107 years old. Definitely one of those traditionalists. And Ruth worked 3 days a week and still lived independently. Unfortunately, she just passed at the end of last year. but phenomenal, stunning, incredible person. We have a lot of people out there that are still in the workforce, that are, and a lot of our retirees are going back to work. You'll see them in the as consultants, as contractors. You'll see them in the fast food restaurants, everywhere, because people don't have enough money to survive in their retirements. Nevertheless, some of the things that they don't want us to assume about them is that you don't have to talk slow. You don't have to yell and scream. Hearing aids are pretty good today. But, just that treatment of respect and manners. Please, thank you, and then showing some simple appreciation. That's been most of the feedback I've gotten when I've asked this question of people in the traditionalist or silent generation. When we go to the next group, those are our baby boomers. And that's between the 57 and 75-year-old group. And I know that some of you are on the call. So in terms of communication needs, they want recognition for their hard work and dedication. I am a boomer. I don't know if I'm proud to be a boomer, but I am. I do prefer that face-to-face communication. It's easier and faster to do the phone call, to do that WebEx link like we're doing right now. But I get more power, more personal power, and more leverage with that face-to-face. Avoid overwhelming with too much information. And then don't assume that just because they're in this group, they're resistant to change. These people have had a tremendous amount of change in technology. So if any of you are on the call today, what do you appreciate when you are asked to do something? So Lori's out there. Lori says she likes that face-to-face communication. But I would like to ask if any of you are out there, what do you appreciate when you're asked to do something? And if you're a boomer? So the other huge benefit is nonverbal communication. That's absolutely true. So when we look at boomers, here's a couple. You see Steve Jobs out there. You see Bill Gates. And those are very, very opposite types of personalities, but they're both boomers. Unfortunately, Mr. Jobs isn't with us anymore. But this was the save the world revolution of the 60s. Yuppies, standing for young urban professionals. It was really a me generation. Nonviolent protest, buy it now and use credit. And then mothers were generally housewives. My mother was not. She had to put herself through college, and she ended up being a police officer. Talk about a non-traditional role. But working outside the home started heavily then for women. But it was one of the first divorce generations. And then people with different identifications started to get into acceptance. So this was a lot of the start of the baby boomers and a lot of acceptance of different things. That face-to-face is appreciated. Thank you so much, Carol Marie. So that's what the boomers were looking for. So now let's talk about Generation X. Gen X, around the age of 41 to 56, 1965 to 1980. And they want autonomy and flexibility. Just let me do my job. Don't micromanage me. And I'll get it done how I need to get it done, not how you need to tell me. And Gen X, there's a lot of you on this call today. So regular feedback and recognition is also important to this group. And we got to keep in mind that not everybody is the same. So you can't just put them all into one category, but these are just some general trends. We want to avoid that micromanagement and that lack of development. If we don't develop these people in the roles that they're in, they will leave. And that's usually a very expensive and difficult thing to have keep people leaving us, especially when they're at this age, because they do have a lot of good reliability in being there day to day. So if any of you are out there, my question to you is, what do people take for granted when they ask you something? If you're in that age range of 41 to 56 years old, what do people take for granted when they ask you to do something? When we look at our boomers, or excuse me, our Gen X's, we've got people like Prince, Carrie Fisher, and Elon Musk is in there, Celine Dion. And these are all polar different personalities. So this, I use this picture intentionally because you just can't lump Gen X all into one group. There's concepts that you need to consider, but still recognizing the person for the individual they are. Some of the things that people take for granted is that you're resistant. You're resistant, or you already know how to do it, or you're resistant to new ideas. Thank you, Mark, for that. That was great. Listening for the answer. That's a big deal. You got to listen to make sure that they heard and understood what you were asking for, or that you already did the job. And that sometimes you can forget that they have that experiential knowledge as well. That's a very great point. Thank you, Kathleen, for that. Some people, Betsy says, I've completed tasks in multiple different ways. She can get it done. Excellent. Good to know. Hook up with me on LinkedIn. Maybe we can talk. Dawn Finney, she says that my ideas won't work because I'm old and might not understand the tech. Spoiler alert, she knows what she's doing. That's great. And I think that is something we all need to keep in mind. These are mature adults. They've been around. They might not be as old as you or as experienced as you in your specific area. Nevertheless, somebody always brings something different to the table. There's the assumption that you will work the extra hours for free to get the job done. That is a fair assumption. I know I have that expectation of my people, whether that's fair or not. I do it, so why shouldn't they? And that's not a fair thing to take for granted. So I often have to reset my expectations because people aren't at the same point of responsibility or at the same point of life choices that I'm at. We're very, very different, and I have to make sure that I'm taking that into consideration. And Sherry, that I can add whatever you're asking me to my already full plate. Very, very good point. I do have those negotiations, and that's a great point because when I'm talking to people and I'm asking them to do something else, if they're able to communicate to me and say, "Look, I'm already doing this, that, and the other," we do have to adjust and shuffle and prioritize to say, "Okay, well, let's do this, that, and then we'll shuffle things." That's a very fair point to consider. There's a Gen X here. It says they love the autonomy and flexibility. Thank you. Dislike assuming that I do not want to continue developing and learning. Good. This is avoiding that lack of development. These people want to make sure that they're growing with the business and they can be a viable part of the future. Flexibility is very important at this age range, and it's raising kids and caring for aging parents. So yeah, that's sandwich generation, right? You still have probably your either late teens or 20s at home, maybe even a little bit older than that, depending on your culture. Plus, you've got parents that you're starting to take care of, and you're at the peak of your career. A lot going on. So great feedback. Thank you, Gen Xers. Let's look at Generation Y, or the millennials. Born between 81 and 96. They're 25 to 40 years old. I know that some of you are on the call here. They need collaboration and teamwork. You see, everyone in this picture has that phone in their hand. They were born with it in their hand. They need that regular, constant feedback and recognition. About 1/3 of my staff across the world is in this category. I have a daughter who's Gen Y. And in making sure that I understand, I mean, I get a lot of good feedback from her. She's not a normal Gen Y kid because she had me for a mom, so that puts normality out of it completely. Nevertheless, she does give me some pretty good touch points and feedback. You don't want to avoid assuming that they're not engaged. They learn by looking it up. Most of us in the Gen X and older, we had to look it up through books or studying and researching, where these guys get information at lightning speed. Chat GPT is out there now. I can find out in seconds. So doing that legwork is not the same anymore. That respect for experience and knowledge is a big deal. And just because they're younger doesn't mean they don't have it. They are on a much sharper learning trajectory than we ever were, because our methods of learning were very, very different. than what they have today. Um, so let's see what Paul over here is saying. I agree. Respect for experience and knowledge, and not assume that I am tech challenged. That's good. Or a young person telling me that I'm stupid. But yet, when I ask them, do you know how to? I don't know if I can say that word. They'll call someone. One of my daughter, she says she just starts pushing buttons to get things to work. I'm terrified to push a button. I think I'm going to break something. But she just pushes everything, and sometimes it works that way. The encyclopedia, that's right. So people that are in this Gen Y, they're in the middle. It's an interesting spectrum between that high tech and old school. That's true. I use a paper map. I actually carry a little atlas in my backpack with me. It's a little global atlas. I have actually had to use that thing on occasion because some places you just don't get the internet connection. And it has saved me from a point or two. And people don't even know what one is anymore. But it's important to know what you're asking for. So what is important for you when you're asked for something? And what I'm finding out in the most part is that we have to listen to their answer, that we have asked the request clearly. So I want to tell you this true story. So like I said, my daughter's a Gen Y, and millennials, they don't generally live to work like many of us do. They work to live. She had 3 of her college friends, and this was fairly recent, it was in the last half a year or so. They called her up and they said, hey, we quit our jobs. We're going to go travel to Europe. They're traveling across the world because they had saved enough money with their jobs, and they just quit their jobs so they could go travel for a while. And then they'll come back home. They'll go back to work after they run out of money. And they're assuming they're going to have a job when they get back. I was horrified. I told her if she did that, I was disowning her. But she's not brave enough to do that. And I'm happy. I think I raised her right. We'll find out. I see. I'm a boomer and I carry cash. That's great. I do too. There's some things you're just going to have to pry out of our cold hands. I have a Gen Y here. So using Google search is a good thing that a lot of people are using. But we just need to remember that this is a much different way of thinking, this Gen Y generation. So let's talk about the Gen Zs. These are born after 1997. They're less than 27 years old. I don't know if we'll have any of these on our call today. I hope we do. If we do, I'd love to hear your answer as to what motivates you at work. I've got another millennial with no cash. That's great. We can't bucket everybody into one category, but we do have these, I'll call them trendencies. So with these folks, you've got born after 2010, they're under 14 years old. You'll see those at the restaurants perhaps, or in some of the service stations, but they're coming soon. But their communication needs, they're technology communication driven. We need ways to channel their creativity and innovation. And one of our key speakers, a guy that does a lot of talking for us, is Zach Gerard. And I'm thinking Zach's not a Z. I think he's a Y, but he gamifies everything. He turns it into games, and that's so powerful. I've gotten so much traction by making things fun and getting people involved and engaged that way. We want to avoid underestimating these young people's abilities. They can find answers much faster than we can here. So I have a Gen X here, Jamila, okay. I work with all generations being discussed. The major challenge is the difference between the generational values regarding remote, hybrid, and in-person interactions. Very good point. That is a big challenge. What I do is I make sure that I'm working with people on a telephone. I pick up and call and talk to people. It's important to show appreciation, sincere appreciation for a job well done, and making sure that we recognize efforts that have been taken and results that have been achieved. So with these folks, one of the things, they really do expect that recognition for what they've done, and they want, I'm going to say, positive constructive criticism. Not you screwed that up, but you could have done it this way or that way. this wasn't as optimal as we needed. Let's see how we could have done it differently to get another result. If it's constructive, but it's in a positive way so that you're not demeaning or belittling somebody for trying. And they learn from that in a positive way. So making sure that we want to avoid that lack of clear expectations and guidelines. And that's frustrating for some of us on the older side, because doggone it, you should know this. I expect you to know this because I'm coming through that lens of experience. And I have to constantly remind myself that the person that I'm communicating to, that receiver, doesn't have that same background. So I still have to step back, retrace steps, and be very, very clear in how I'm communicating and what the deliverables need to be. One big thing, habla español, 49% is español. So 49% of the Gen Z population is Hispanic based. And this is key in the United States today. You've got to really understand, we've got a lot of Hispanic based people. And that has its own different cultural activities going on with it. So we need to make sure that we are understanding that. The holidays are different. Jd Marhevko, the Day of the Dead for Halloween, the different types of fiestas and different types of celebrations are different than what your religion might have. But taking that into consideration, making sure that we're showing equal respect. Debbie says, I think we need to focus as not so much on age, but making sure that we show respect for all. And I fully agree with that. That really gets you a lot farther than anything else. But I was shocked at that 49% Hispanic factoid. And it really makes me think a whole lot differently when I'm working. And when I'm looking across rooms now, when I'm in a conference room or when I'm in the colleges, it's like, wow, it really is that way. It's very interesting to see. So what we need to do, how do we do this? Make a targeted communication plan. We're going to go through the plan, do, check, act cycle. And this is the plan and do page. So what do I need? I'm the communicator. So what do I need? Selfish. It's for me. Okay. But then what do they need? So we call it the with them factor. What's in it for me? So it's what's in it for me, but it's what's in it for them as well. So it's got to be a two-way street. Whatever I'm going to get out of this, it has to be just as successful for the person that I'm communicating with. The need can be converted to a we. If I need something, it's got to help them in some way as well. What's that why of it? Why is this an important thing? How does this help us, the company, the position we're in? What's the thing that created the need for this work to begin with? Do the ask and actively listen to make sure they have it. I generally now end most of my discussions after I've had a conversation with somebody. Tell me what I asked for so I make sure that I explained it correctly. I put it on me, but I ask them to explain to me that they understand the request. That's been a very powerful tactic for me, because if I didn't get it right, I then have that opportunity to adjust and tweak the request. I like to avoid the tell. I'm telling you to do this, just do it, and just go away and tell me when it's done. That's not a good methodology. There are businesses where that's necessary. If you're in the military, if you're in a hospital ER environment, that is a tell, command, and control environment. Do this, do that, ding, dang, doom. Just do them all right. So depending on that environment, if you can avoid the tell, you get some very powerful collaboration with that. So you know where you're at. Who am I across these 5 generations? Are you a traditional silent? Are you a baby boomer? Are you a Gen X? What are you? And then who are you talking with? Am I, I'm a boomer, so am I going up to a traditional silent? Am I going across to a boomer? Am I going to someone younger than me, X, Y, or Z? And then based on what I think I understand about that person's personality, how do I create that plan of discussion? Do I need to pick up the phone and talk to them? Can I do it with a WebEx? Does it need to be on video? Can I just do it in an email? Can I do it in chat? Uh, there's all these different ways that I can choose to communicate and equally have active listening happening. So then once that communication happens, did it work? I then do the check to see if it was successful. And then for me, I have to adjust myself and act. If it was successful, great, I can repeat more of that. If it wasn't successful, what could I have done differently to change it the next time around? So Amy is saying, I think companies should train communication strategies that pull the best from all generations. And a lot of companies do that, Amy, and there's never enough, in my opinion. I've been, this really helps with those interpersonal skills. And it's that politeness and, just being nice and human with each other. So Paul's out there. Yes, I agree. We need to show respect for all. Totally get that. And we see a lot of the TV shows where it's very disrespectful. And that's what our people are growing up on. So they see that as an okay way to do things. And yeah, Rebecca, I agree. It's how far we've gotten away from simply being nice. Well, everything comes in a cycle. Hopefully we'll get back to that cycle again. But I have to ask myself, did my communication go well? Did the person hang up in anger? So I actually had that happen to me yesterday morning. Someone hung up in anger because we weren't able to agree on communication. So we had to circle back, get back to that individual and see what we needed to do to correct that situation. If it's a successful communication, we check for that understanding. Did we get what we needed? Did we both get what we needed? That's not always possible. When I'm working with somebody, sometimes they're just not going to get what they need. It may not be a physical possibility, but what's the best we can do? And then again, explaining the why of it so that they can understand why it is this way at this time. And then what went well with that communication? Ask for their feedback. How could I have talked to you differently about this? Some people say, well, I want you to give me a 100% raise. It's like, well, that ain't going to happen. So, how can the approaches be adjusted? And then ask for support through others and help. I use a lot of mentors, and I am a mentor to several mentees. And I ask I get as much from the mentees as I think they do from me. It's a definite two-way street. But with the mentees, I'm often picking their brain for ideas on how to support that communication. So overall, that was the plan, do, check, act cycle. So what we've done is, we've learned about the 5 generations that are among us today. Those traditional silents, the baby boomers, the Gen X, the Gen Y, the Gen Z. And then, but we need to be aware of our diversity in age, gender, culture, and other factors that will matter when we're working on how we communicate to each other. So after this discussion, you should be able to understand those 5 major generations that are in our world today and recognize that for communication to work, we need that plan of approach to ensure our mutual success. It's not just about your success as the communicator. It's about both parties being successful. And then practice and refine it. This is never a perfect thing. Humans are never perfect, and we don't ever achieve that nirvana. But we get better and better the more we do it. So Adrian says, completely agree about being nice and respectful. I found out that those in Millennial and Z feel like it's about the employers giving them their wants and not just doing a job well done. And that can be a feeling we have. I know millennials and Zs that are not that way. And then it's training and education for those that do feel that way to get them to bring them along and understand. Yeah, you're not living at mom and dad's house and you're not getting everything in your hands. You're going to have to earn these things. So by letting them earn their way through and showing them those paths, many of them do come along. We practice and refine as we go on. So how do you take it from here? You create that mutual plan. You share your experiences and stories. You listen actively and then apply what you learn so that you can help to make a difference where you can. So I'd like to thank you all for listening. Please feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. My name is JD, and it does not stand for Jack Daniels. I am very active on LinkedIn. That's the only social media I have. I do have this in the appendix of the deck. The deck can be shared as it's being shared as a PDF. So this is just some other notes. These just come from a multiple form of internet sources that you'll find out about these other gens. And then Doug, I'm going to give it back to you, and then we can go to the questions.
Okay, thank you, JD. So informative. So we've got one question so far. The question is from Krista. Do you have any tips for communication when you need to assert your position with someone from an older generation? Sometimes this can be uncomfortable.
That is totally true. Even though I am a boomer, the majority of the people I work with are much older than I am. And the other, I've got the working force is a lot younger, but the boss and the supervisory staff is a lot older. And in dealing with that, what I do is I always try to speak with data, facts, and trends. If I am asking a traditional or an older person than me, I will bring the facts to the table. I say, this is what I see is happening. Do you see the same thing? I try to get alignment and agreement that we're seeing the same thing. If I can get them to agree to that and say, this is what I'm thinking of an approach. Do you agree with that, or do you have other ideas? And then we'll talk that through for a few moments. And maybe they have something I haven't thought about. And it happens both ways. They think my idea is fine, or they come up with something else completely different. And then we work on negotiating what we think is the best path. And we'll have what we call fast paths. Well, let's try this first. If that doesn't work, we'll regroup in 2 days and we'll try that second. So we give ourselves wiggle room to try different things to get an effective or a timely response. But by working and collaborating with an older person, someone more senior than you that may have more experience, I'm always working on getting that alignment of what it is, what needs to be done to address the situation, and how I need them to help. And then with that, either I have ideas on what they need to do, or they have ideas on what they need to do, and we negotiate that path.
Okay, JD, thank you. We're going to stop the recording at this point, so we don't have a lot of questions on that. A lot of times people don't want that in a recording. So we'll thank you for working on this.